Hello, this is David Brand with Honeycomb Digital Investments, and I'm here with Baxter Hines and Carol Goforth. Baxter has been in the financial services industry for over 20 years, the Chief Investment Officer for Honeycomb Digital Investments, and most recently the author of Digital Finance, Security Tokens, and Unlocking the Real Potential of Blockchain. It was published by Wiley Publishing this fall. I'm also here with Professor Goforth. Carol is a professor of law at the University of Arkansas Law School and an expert in securities regulation. Most recently, she's published a textbook on the regulation of crypto transactions, and that was published by West Publishing. We're going to talk about a few current events going on right now in the world of blockchain and crypto transactions. First, let's talk about the SEC recently announcing a new standalone office dedicated to digital assets and blockchain. The SEC announced that Valerie Cespenik will serve as the director of that office and report directly to the chairman. Carol, I wanted to get your thoughts on that piece of news, as it is pretty recent.
Sure. Actually, it's not quite a new office. In 2018, FinHub was set up by the SEC to work under the Division of Corporate Finance, and Valerie has been serving as director since that time. What's really new is that she's going to be reporting directly to whoever the new chairman is, Jay Clayton, just having announced that he's stepping down. And so what it really allows is for her to have direct input to and from whoever becomes the new commissioner. Anytime you have a change in administration, it's not unexpected that there might be turnover in the chairs of these kinds of positions. So it'll be interesting to see who winds up taking over Clayton's position, and whether that person has a more regulatory bent, and whether or not Valerie and her office goes along with that. I mean, other than that, the FinHub has been around and doing a pretty good job of trying to stay on top of crypto. What do you think, Baxter?
I think the whole appointment is great. I think it signals to the market that the SEC and the regulators here in the United States want to stay abreast of the changes that are happening because of blockchain. A lot of other countries are developing regulations and rules by which the industry needs to play in. And so I think it's a terrific sign of confidence that the SEC is really moving right along and trying to encourage and at a minimum create different kinds of guidelines by which the industry needs to follow. So I think that's a positive overall.
Yeah, actually, if you look at the announcement that the SEC did when this change was just announced at the start of December, they specifically said that part of their motivation was to facilitate the innovation that is potential with this particular technology.
Well, so just continuing to talk about regulation, things are the textbook that you put out in March. Probably already needs to be updated, right? Things are coming out quickly. Maybe they'll be good for sales. As far as updates, what area do you see legislators putting the most effort towards now? So we've got cryptocurrencies, we've got digital payments, security tokens, enterprise blockchain. Cryptocurrencies seems like it sort of has the most spice in the news these days. What do you think?
That is a really tough question. And part of it is tough because blockchain is so huge. It wouldn't surprise me if the first initiatives aren't more geared towards monitoring things like drug distribution, simply because of the environment that we find ourselves in and the need to carefully trace who's taken doses of the various vaccines. And so the supply side and the monitoring and whether or not that's going to be satisfactory under, some of the tracing requirements for the Food and Drug Administration and that type of issue, I think is likely to push regulation there first. Another huge pressure that is going to be felt is when huge economies like China's announce central bank currencies on the blockchain. I think that is going to force our Federal Reserve and regulators who watch very carefully the role of the US dollar in international currency to move on that front. I would like to say cryptocurrencies, because frankly, the regulation of crypto transactions and cryptocurrencies is a bigger mess. It's in the hands of too many different places dealing under regulations and laws that have been in existence for decades and don't really fit crypto assets. So I would like it if that was the first movement. I just am not sure that's where it's going to happen first.
I think in the end, though, if we can get any kind of use case or any kind of proof of concept that can prove to the regulators, legislators, and the broader society that blockchain is, again, this better, faster, cheaper way of doing things, I think that, again, is a major positive. So I agree with you that there are a lot of pressing things. The medical field is definitely one spot where there is a lot of attention. And I agree with you also on the central bank digital currencies. Central banks around the world really are going to have to gravitate towards a blockchain-based currency I think for three reasons. I mean, the first is the efficiency. It's just so much cheaper and faster to utilize a digital currency than what we use today. The second is it's for inclusion. You can help out so many people that are unbanked or that maybe don't live close to a bank branch or just the cell phone usage and smartphones are so prevalent now. If you've got access to a smartphone, you've got access to money through the digital format. And so that is going to be extremely alluring. And then the third thing, which you hinted at, which is relevance. If the central banks don't do this, they're going to be left out. You've got private solutions like Facebook trying to get into the game. You've got Tether. You've got USD Coin. Lots of different options out there on the private side that are pressuring them. But then, like you said, if a big country like China or the EU, whomever it is, chooses to go next, the Fed's got to move along with it. Otherwise, they're just left in the dust, and they're standing as the premier monetary policy agency is going to be left behind, and they're just not going to allow that to happen.
I think that's right.
So, piggybacking off of that, talking about U.S. versus the rest of the world as far as regulation and who's adopting what. How do you see the U.S. Their efforts stacking up against other countries such as China, Singapore, Switzerland, just to name a few, when it comes to adoption and regulation? Yeah,
the United States is such a wonderful, marvelous, unusual country. In the dual federal state system that we have, it makes regulation and legislation of major developments like this so much more complicated. We don't have a federal government that says, voila, do it this way or else. We've got 50 different states that are very ready to assert their authority over all kinds and aspects of regulation. So it is much harder to have a consistent, thematic, visionary regulatory approach in this country because you've got to have 51 different groups agreeing. I think we've put a lot of attention, a lot of focus, a lot of effort in being very careful about how we move. So we didn't come down and say, like, for example, China did originally, no, it's illegal, you can't do it, we're not going to use it, we don't like it, go away. Even though I'm sure that many of our regulators at first felt that, oh, this is terribly disruptive, we don't want to upset the apple cart. We are the leading world financial authority. We don't want to lose that. Nonetheless, the regulatory response was very measured, very, we've got problems, let's address those problems with an effort not to stifle innovation. Now, when you switch to a country that has a more singular approach and already a focus on finance, like Switzerland, or with an economy that's not as broad-based and diversified, like the Arab Emirate republics, which has a relatively small population and a lot of money and a lot of high-tech stuff, they have a much larger incentive compared to the difficulty of their economic environment to create a system where they take leadership and keep leadership in the financial area. I mean that they're moving in that direction because they can. They are well positioned to do that. It's easier for them. And China just has a government that's so autocratic. It's easier for them to mandate top down. For most of the world, I don't know that those approaches are going to work. A very measured approach that is, looking for consensus, looking for an approach that satisfies a number of different policy considerations in the long run may actually be more influential. So I'm not happy with where we are, but I'm not unhappy either, and I'm not surprised.
Right. Like you said, the U.S. has that advantage of being such a big economy that they can kind of follow behind from a regulatory standpoint. And I wrote about a lot of similar types of topics in my book to what you just said. The smaller countries, whether it's Singapore, Switzerland, they can kind of set the stage and be a sort of sandbox or a use case, whatever you want to call it, for these digital assets to grow and thrive and work in real time. And then their economies, they can just kind of follow and take what they like from whatever Switzerland or Singapore puts together, and then implement them once there's a little bit more data and more examples in which to prove to the citizenry of these larger countries that this stuff is really the real deal.
Nice. Well, I appreciate your time today, and I'm certain that we'll talk more the next couple weeks as more stories come out, and there's a lot of interest right now around the asset class of cryptocurrencies simply because of the run up in prices, and with the new administration, hopefully we'll get some movement on some of the things that we've talked about. But thank you again, and we'll speak again in a couple weeks.
My pleasure.
Enjoyed it.